Are you good? All right. All right. Let's call this meeting of the Marion County Board of Supervisors to order. Roll call. Jake.
Keisha Johnner.
Here.
Mark Ramey.
Here.
Steve McCombs.
Here.
Entertain a motion on today's agenda.
Make motion to approve today's agenda.
Second.
McCombs.
Aye.
Ramey.
Aye.
Johnner.
Aye.
Any communications, Jake?
Not for me.
Board?
None that can't be discussed in business item one.
All right. Very good. We'll move on. Public comments. This is the portion of our agenda the public can speak on items not listed on today's agenda. Board can't act on those items, but they could be topics for future board meetings. Are there any public comments on items not listed on today's agenda? Renee, seen any? All right, and none inside. Very good. We'll entertain a motion on today's consent agenda.
Make motion to approve today's consent agenda.
Second.
Ramey.
Aye.
Johnner.
Aye.
McCombs.
Aye.
All right, very good. On to business. Item number one is just to continue our EMS discussion that we've had the last two meetings. I'll kind of set the table for this. We don't have, I don't know, Dylan, are you representing Knoxville today? Or are you just here visiting? I just want to make sure we got so many people out for spring break. I want to know who's here and what they're here for. So we've had I'll call it a very robust discussion over the last couple of meetings on EMS and EMS Essential. I don't want to steal too much thunder, but on Friday, I had the opportunity to meet with representatives of the city of Knoxville and Pella, our hospitals, and they have reached an agreement on potential distribution of a proposed tax. They wanted to present that to me. We've had those meetings going on as it's been a little controversial, but they've been very productive. And I think the city of Knoxville, city of Pella have had great discussions, Dylan, over the last 2 months. So they did that per our meeting when I asked, well, we got to November and we really weren't getting anywhere. We were kind of deciding between Knoxville and Pella, how should we distribute a tax if it were approved? So I want everybody to understand no tax is being approved by this. This is really the process to get it to a ballot initiative because it has to go through the Essential Committee. It has to be approved by the board, and then it has to get onto a ballot in which the residents of Marion County will get to vote on that. So, but there's a process that has to be followed, and part of that process, and Dylan is the chair of that committee. I don't want to throw Dylan under the bus here since he just showed up to probably listen. But we have to get a proposal that can pass the committee. And to date, none of the proposals have passed the committee, correct, Dylan? So we needed something to get with the group and then say, can you vote on something to come to the Board of Supervisors? And on Friday, I met with Brian and Heather and Mike and Don and representatives of the hospital, and they've arrived at what they think is a potential proposal to go to the EMS group to then vote on that and see if it gets a majority. If it gets a majority, then that comes to the Board of Supervisors. If the Board of Supervisors approves it and declares EMS essential, then the process kicks in. Does this go to a ballot initiative? And then we have to work on ballot language. Jared, Jake will have to work on timings and things like that. So it was very encouraging on Friday to have that discussion and that people have moved this forward as I requested toward the end of the fall. And now we've arrived at that point where maybe we have something that Dylan can then call the meeting. And that's what I was asked on Friday by the cities. What's the next step? I said, well, they need to get with Dylan. Dylan's the chair of the group, call a meeting of EMS Essential, and then get the voting members together again to see if they want to vote and pass this proposal, which none of them have seen. Is that correct, Dylan? Right. I think I'm the only one who's seen it. I think they presented it to me on Friday. So that's the next step for Dylan to call that meeting. Brian was supposed to get with you and do that. And then if it passes, since that's a committee sanctioned by the Board of Supervisors, the next step then would be to come to the Board of Supervisors to present that proposal. Then the board would vote, and then, and I'm broad generalities here, But then that would go to a potential ballot initiative that has to meet timings from Jake's standpoint and from Jared's standpoint. And as I said in Friday's meeting, my job will be to meet with you two to work out a timeline on how we can get this to a ballot in the event it passes the Essential Committee and then the Board of Supervisors. So I think it was a good discussion. And what I hope to do in the upcoming couple of days is get with Jared and Jake to then work out a timeline to see what happens next and how quickly could this become a ballot initiative. We had missed some timings in the fall. Dylan had checked with Jared and Jake and said that there really wasn't an urgency in the fall because we had missed those timings because there wasn't an agreement on a funding mechanism. But now that there is, we can fire that conversation up again within the EMS Essential Committee. So that's my up. Dylan, fair? Bill, fair? Okay, good. So that's where we're at in the process. I know there's been a lot of other noise. There's no public health takeover of EMS. There's none of those things that have even been proposed. So I'm very happy that Knoxville and Pella have had those discussions and have come to that position, and then we'll go from there. So, board comments, questions?
Yeah, I think through this whole process, we've kind of, I don't know, we've kind of lost focus on what it is we're trying to accomplish. I mean, everybody has different ideas on how to get there. And that's the crux of the problem in my mind. How do we get there? I know I met with some township trustees last night. They didn't know what was going on in Clay Township. So I tried to explain to my best to them what I thought was going on. You know, and I think obviously the township trustees can levy their own tax for fire protection. And I was under the impression that that did not include EMS, but apparently it does. Am I wrong, or?
It can.
I mean,
It can. It can.
Okay,
It's not a shall, it says it may.
yeah. So they can leverage that tax that they levy in both directions, fire and EMS. Obviously, you know, we have different levels of economic prosperity in the townships. I guess my question would be, have the township trustees been involved in any of this process as far as, you know, because it says in this one bill that the rate, if we were to approve all this, and I'd be lax if I said that I didn't think EMS was an essential service. I think everybody in the county would agree to that. But it says that it raise only the amount needed. Now there again, there comes another problem. What amount is needed? Obviously, the smaller townships probably don't need the same funding level as, say, a Pella or an Knoxville, but they still need that funding level because it's important to have those outreaching ambulances. They may not provide the life-saving service immediately on the spot, but at least maybe they can get you to a point where a bigger ambulance service can provide that service, which that could mean a half hour.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
from the far reaches of the county to a meeting point. And I'm just throwing that
Yeah.
out there because all these questions beg to be answered when you ask the public to levy a tax. They need to know where that money's going and for what reason. That's my opinion.
Well, and Steve, I think that's exactly right. That's what the committee wrestled with for almost a year. And in fairness to everybody on the committee, I thought they did a very good job in general trying to wrestle with those two competing interests that I think everybody agreed. We want to have the best quality ambulance service in Marion County that we can have, but we have to be able to afford it, number one.
Exactly.
And we have to be very conscious of the fact that if you're going to say, let's levy a tax, well, in the current economic environment, that's serious stuff. I mean, people are already paying, on average, over the last 3 years, 24% more for their grocery bill,
And you're right. It's the economic environment we're in.
right?
It's really tough to ask the taxpayers
to do more.
to do more. I mean, it's up to them. I mean, I'm glad they put that in there, that it gets to come up to a vote of the people, because the people should be making that decision.
And we had these discussions during the meetings, Steve, and it was, if you're working in the private sector right now, if you have or public sector, doesn't matter, if you have a job and you're paying for insurance, you're already paying for an ambulance because you'll get
Mhm.
billed. If you're paying Medicare tax, well, you're paying for ambulance service. If you're living in Knoxville and Pella, you're paying a city levy.
And you know,
For
that-
ambulance
that-
service.
Excuse me, Mark, but that's a good point. That was another question I had. It'd be interesting to know in the billing process. What does a Medicare call cost? What does a Medicaid cost or call cost? And what does just a normal insurance call cost? Because that's all, to me, that's all figured in on when I hear these numbers bandied around by the different organizations, it cost me so much to start up my ambulance. Well, obviously, Clay Township, where I'm from, it doesn't cost that much to turn the ambulance on, because we don't have the, what's the,
You're not staffing it.
huh?
24, you're not staffing it.
Yeah, we're not
24/7.
staffing, and we don't have the level of staff that, say, a Knoxville or Pella does. So basically Clay's pretty much we're gonna get there to help you and transport you somewhere that somebody can do something for you. I mean,
Right.
it's
Your-
so
your over-
confusing.
Your overhead is less.
Yeah,
And in a lot of the rural townships, the overhead is less, and that's something we were all talking about. So to have a one-size-fits-all solution becomes very difficult to do. And the law doesn't give us, to be honest, okay, the EMS essential law. Steve, you raised great points about the townships. We talked about those things over the year of discussions, that the fire levies may be applied to EMS, but then you have to ask the question, do you have enough for rural fire, right? And that's the balance point that everybody was trying to discuss. But then when the legislature says, oh, by the way, you can pass a one-size-fits-all tax, well, that might work for a county that has a county-supported hospital, where the county hospital gets a levy and the ambulance service all runs out of that one location. That's not Marion County. That's not how we function.
yeah. You look at all these bills and these funding sources, it's so confusing on how do you
How do you do it?
break them down to make it work for our particular situation?
And my contention has been all along, and Dylan and I have talked about this over the course of the last year, any proposal that comes out of the EMS group that comes to this board, because we're a representative government, it's not direct democracy. So elected officials have to decide on A, what they support, and B, can they explain that to the public? If people support an increase in taxation, can you explain that to the public in a reasonable way? If you can't do that, you shouldn't vote for it. It shouldn't just be, let's defer, let's let it pass through and get it on a ballot and shove it to the public. And I want to give Dylan credit for the last year for making sure we didn't just ramrod something through and then say, oh, quick, let's get it on a ballot, let everybody vote on it. Because once you do this, so let's say you need the money. Let's say there are holes, and we've talked about that. And once you vote on it, then there's a statutory timeframe where you can't vote on it again for a while if it went down. So let's say the people think they need it, but it's ill-conceived and ill-constructed, and you can't explain it. Well, it'll fail. And maybe, I don't like taxation. I don't like increasing taxes on anything. I've tried to reduce taxes in my 12 years. So I'm very sensitive to that. But if the people would want it, then you've got to be able to explain it as an elected official. You have to. You cannot go.
That's exactly what I went through last night, Mark.
Yeah.
I was told by the people that need the money, I'm not going to vote for another tax unless I know. Explain to me how much is going to be raised and how is it going to be divvied up? Otherwise, I'm not voting for it.
Right.
I do think that we need to, and reading the code again, it does say that we need to make EMS essential, and then we do the committee. So it is such a thing that, there is a process in which it should be laid out. I do think that, Mark, when originally, when we spoke about this even last year, it was, let's try to have an idea of what we're going to be looking at. And, but I do think that the code clearly states that it's like 60 days, you got to vote on it twice to make EMS essential as a board of supervisors. Then there's this committee that is formed, and then that is then helps with the ballot language and knowing from there.
That's a good point, but it doesn't, it's an advisory council. Doesn't, in the way I read it, you know, if it passes and everything, then then there will be an advisory council set up that shows how to distribute those funds.
That's correct. That's exactly how it works. The committee that exists right
Yeah,
now,
but I want to, that's what I'm.
But you're exactly right.
I want to make sure that this committee is not the advisory council.
and it's not, we,
I
this
think we gotta
committee,
make sure that
it's not.
I
This
just wanna make
committee,
that clear to
this
everybody.
committee was formed by the board because this board, all of us, did not vote to make EMS essential. We wanted a proposal as to why we should do that. And if there was a tax request, why? What was the rationale behind the tax request? That was the purpose of the committee. Dylan, fair?
Yeah, we were, yeah,
Dylan, can you hang on so people can hear you?
we're establishing the framework of of an eventual proposal.
Right.
That's fair. Yeah.
That's
and-
what I think the confusion is, that this committee is not the one that's going to make the final decisions on how we're going to divvy up the money.
That is correct.
That council has not even been put in place yet or established.
Right. And so those are two different issues, Keisha.
But the code doesn't clearly state that, and I think we do need to make sure that the people understand that the way the code states, it is EMS essential and then the committee.
Right.
And so we do have this committee, and we have kind of got the cart before the horse and regarding the committee and saying, hey, what is your thoughts to think about it? There's not an issue. It's just that I think that we need to make sure there is a line in the sand. And then ultimately, it doesn't state in the code, who's going to make that advisory council? That's a question that we also have to think of. So
I think, doesn't it say the EMS?
Yeah.
People make up that advisory council?
That's exactly what it
I think
says.
that's what
Yeah.
it says, but
The-
I'm not sure. I mean.
Yeah, we can quote code all day and we can have Jared do a review of that, but we already had this discussion a year ago when we formed this group at the request of the EMS Association. That's how this got formed. It wasn't us forming the group. It was the EMS providers requesting the group be formed. So we've already jumped that hurdle. And now the question is, what will come before the board to then trigger the rest of the statute, which is declaration of essential. And then you move forward from there on those other elements, Keisha. But we haven't put any cart before the horse. We needed a proposal that we could support when you talk about tax increases. That was the sense of the board last year. That was the sense of the board. That was sense of Pella and Knoxville. When you say, what are you going to present to the public for a tax increase? And how are you going to explain it and justify it? That was the primary concern of the board. So there's no cart before anything. We had a process in place. We actually checked on the code last year when we were talking about this. We've been checking on the code the entire time for the past year and having a review of timelines and ballot language and when should that go on. So everybody's been following the correct process. And now the question becomes.
there is nothing illegal. Yes, there's nothing illegal
there's nothing
in regarding
And
us meeting.
I don't like
And
that
that-
being brought up because it shouldn't be brought up
But I
that way.
think that it is
That
important.
distorts that distorts what's gone on, Keisha.
I would like to say, Jake, in regards to, because there was no action item in this, on 3/26 and regarding the EMS Association letter, I would like, I'm requesting a discussion and action item regarding that letter. I have no further comments.
I think you're both correct, if that's possible, given what's been said. I think we, by statute, have done more than this committee has needed to because we wanted to be as prepared as possible.
Correct.
Yes, there is still the formal group, the official group to come. We've kind of been operating as sort of an ad hoc, we've called ourselves so far. There are folks that are going to be part of that eventual formal committee that are a part of this committee and folks that are not. We wanted to bring in as many perspectives as we could. But yeah, as far as, cart before the horse or not, yes and no. We've gone deeper into the weeds, but we've also seen, with other counties that have approved this, they rush to ballot, they rush to get it done, and then they go, okay, now we have this money, what are we gonna do with it?
Right,
We didn't want to be in that boat, so,
right.
yeah.
And again, to reiterate, we checked on these issues when we formed this group. This group is a product of the Board of Supervisors, not statute. So everybody needs to understand that. There's nothing wrong with the formation of this group. And to Dylan's point, it was to make sure things were well articulated for when we did say, if that would happen, that EMS is an essential service. Because as we said during the course of the meetings, that then triggers the next set of processes, right? So we confirmed with Jared, we did all the steps we needed to do, and we said, let's have this committee meet and make that proposal so that the board had confidence that they were doing the right thing. And people put a year's worth of work in and discussion in to get there. And now we finally have got to a place where Pella and Knoxville have said, we think we can have an understanding of how this works, which is what we needed because you're our two largest cities. Yeah, Jason.
So just quick on the committee that's there, I guess next action steps or whatever, when the city of Knoxville and Pella have met and this proposal and this there, is that going to go back to the EMS, not the official committee, but this advisory committee? Is that kind of next steps?
That's next steps,
Those
Jason.
are-
Yeah.
Perfect. I just want to make sure whatever that, I think one of that, we're going in the right direction, but I just think, I mean, to Steve's point or different things, it's like, those EMS providers, once they get a chance to digest that and review that, whether it be the fire chiefs or whoever it is, that'll be a very important meeting because then it will lead on to those other discussions that are going to be there. And I think they should have that opportunity to do that. So,
Yeah, and that's what
It's
that'll
my
be the next step.
understanding, Jason, if I'm articulating any of this in my mind correctly, that EMS will make up, that will determine who is going to be on that advisory council.
Yeah,
Correct.
ultimately down the road. I just
ultimately
think the
down the
people that
road.
have put in a lot of time already, along these lines, it's good for them to have that proposal that you guys have kind of talked about so they can digest that, look at it. Because I think the ultimate goal is everybody wants something moving forward that explains all of your questions that
Exactly.
you're having there.
That's why I said I think we're all losing focus on what we're trying to accomplish here.
Right.
I don't care who comes up with the information.
Right.
I think it's,
Let's just get it out there to the public.
yeah, I think those EMS providers, once they have that and they can digest that and, go through it and whether tear it apart or totally support it, I think that's the next step. And I hope that continues on is I guess what I'm asking.
And Jason, to your point, it's not, it has to be the EMS providers in concert with the elected officials.
Sure.
I mean, the elected officials are elected and they have to be responsive to the public. The EMS providers aren't elected. So there has to be both sides have to understand what they're attempting to do here and say, yep, this will work. No, this won't work.
Well, that only makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
that's
I think
exactly-
I think those EMS providers are just wanting that ability, or, now if in this meeting it's kind of been discussed, there's kind of some action items moving forward with the city of Pella, city of Knoxville. There's been some agreements, hospital, higher level side of it.
Mhm.
Now give it back to those boots on the ground people to say, is this something that can work? Is this something, how will we fit in? And I think that's kind of your guys' next step. I'm not trying to say it.
Yes.
I just hope
And
that.
you're right. And restating that, and I will state this because I'm reading the code here. It says 422 DB, each county for which a resolution has been adopted. So us as a board of supervisor would do a resolution and agreeing that it'd be essential. Then this shall be coordinate efforts with the local emergency medical service agencies to establish a county emergency medical service system advisory council.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what I'm just hoping
That's-
doesn't, until that formal group is made, continue with the group we have. Because there's a lot of people that put time and effort into that. And just don't create a brand new committee. Let them have some say as to
Right.
what's coming along and as part of that. Then once you do your official resolution, you do your official committee, they already have a lot of the homework already done because like Dylan said, that's going to be part of those same people. but just give them that opportunity
And,
of looking and reviewing of what you guys have discussed
Yeah.
is all I'm asking.
and I think that's right, Jason. I think that's what the intent has been all along, to do that.
I just, that,
Now, you're welcome. And
I think the intent of that levy, if it was to be enacted or voted on, it's not, again, I'm saying, like I said at the last meeting, it's not to try to make any service whole again and make up any deficits. It's what are we gonna do going into the future? Am I correct in saying that?
I think you're absolutely correct. Yeah. There is no, like I said in the prior meetings, a tax. If a tax were passed at the maximum levy of 75 cents, that's if the residents agreed, we agreed, and the committee agrees, you only generate about 1.4 to 1.5 million dollars. Well, Dylan knows this. The folks in Pella know this. That doesn't even cover the loss right now. So it isn't to make anybody whole, Steve. It's about, we know there's a funding gap, and especially even in the rural services, the ones outside of Pella and Knoxville, there's a funding gap. So how do we address the funding gap when the whole system is really dependent on each other to work correctly?
I'm a little confused on some of this. I don't know what all taxes are being levied toward EMS right now. Does the hospitals, do they levy a tax?
No.
They do not.
It's just the cities.
Only if it's a county-run hospital.
Correct.
Okay.
So with Dylan, and I don't want to speak for Knox, Dylan's here to speak for Knoxville if he wants to do that, but the cities right now, Pella and Knoxville levy a part of their levy supports their ambulance services.
Can the other cities do that?
If they want to, yeah,
Okay.
that's up to
I
them.
know they speak to populations and, I mean,
Yes.
it's so confusing.
There are different structures. There's 357, which Lindsay always has to correct me because I call it 327 because I think in terms of engine sizes, not in terms of that. And then there's the 422D. That's what we've been operating under right now, is a county-wide approach for that levy. So Jason.
to your point, Steve, I think a lot of it, like right now, when it comes back to this advisory committee, not only just the money source of those taxes where it's at, I think those, EMS groups are also looking at efficiency. I mean, and they have to do that because when that money comes into play, they also have to figure out, can we be more efficient in how we provide those services, but yet still
Well,
provide
I
good
would hope
service.
they would because
exa-
that's in anything you do.
And exactly, that's what it has to, when it comes back to the voters, they have to be able to justify, we can get, I mean, we've already looked at making it more efficient and effective.
Yeah,
And now,
you said it better. I was trying to say that
Yeah,
a while ago.
that's-
but you
that's what I was
just
just
said it
trying to-
better.
yeah, and they're doing that. I think it's a combination of all of that together, but it's going to take some time. I mean, this, in my opinion, this isn't going to be done, and to Dylan's point, it shouldn't be rushed through because by the time it goes to a ballot, it has to be where the voters, I mean, and the citizens, want that to happen. They have to be able to afford that levy, and it has to be where there's been efficiency and effective means done to combine that.
Right.
And I think that's what the ultimate goal of the committee is, so to your point. That's-
Right.
It has to pass by 60%.
Yeah, so the public's not gonna vote for it unless they feel we're gonna get better service. I mean, in a way that comes with that effective and efficient manners of doing it.
If they're a smart voter, they won't. But-
Well-
But again, it's up to the people. And again, like I said, as it should be. But they need to know, again, what you just said, what they're getting
Yeah.
and is everybody trying to be more efficient? To make the best use of those dollars.
So, Jim.
I just have a real quick question. So it sounds to me like there are really two committees operating right now. One was authorized by the three of you as the supervisors. Then there was another select committee that included the city of Pella, the Pella Hospital, city of Knoxville, Knoxville Hospital. Why were not the rural entities included in that group for development of this plan that's now going to be presented to the rest of the group?
Well, I'll answer that question. We got to November after a year's worth of discussions and we didn't have a distribution agreement. Nobody could agree on what
Were
the
they
tax
asked
should
to
be.
provide a distribution agreement?
Yes. That's part of the,
That was part of the charge of
that's
the
part of the
committee?
charge. If you're gonna have a tax, then how will it be distributed? What's the plan to distribute those tax dollars?
And I assume there were, what, 5 people in this select committee that came up with this plan last Friday that you
They didn't,
identified?
no, it's Knoxville and Pella came up with it. I don't know who was involved in that discussion, to be honest with you.
Well, it sounded like it was Don and Mike and then the mayor and.
I don't know.
That's who you identified this.
That was in Friday's meeting, yeah.
Okay. All right.
But
But it will
the-
come, that
the-
will come back to the authorized committee by the Board of Supervisors. That will then be vetted and all the rest of the counties, all the rest of the townships, all the rest of the county. And the townships will then be able to tear it down and rebuild it in a way that makes sure that everybody's fairly treated.
Well, I don't, it'll go
Or is
to,
this just gonna be a one or nothing deal?
it's going to go to this group. And according to the way it's set up right now, this group has voting members. If it passes by a majority vote, that then comes to this board.
And each community and each township has a vote.
They're selected by the members of the EMS committee, so I assume that's the case.
Okay.
So,
That was my understanding.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that everybody's treated fairly
I do
and,
too.
and not just getting a select group to say, okay, here it is, all or nothing.
well,
And all the little guys get left out.
yeah, and Jim, to your point though, the committee looked at 4 different options during the course of a year and couldn't agree on one of them. So it literally ran into a standstill where we couldn't vote on one. We tried, we had discussions, and there was no agreement. So now this is a way to say with Pella and Knoxville, there are 2 largest communities, and they're kind of the linchpins on how EMS works because they have the most ambulance, they have the most staff. Can they agree on a distribution agreement that then they could take to the rural services that they support? If they can't, then we can't go very far because you can't have an agreement between Bussey and Melcher. And if Knoxville and Pella don't agree, it stops.
I would think that Melcher and Bussey need to make sure that they have equal representation to a.
And they're,
Knoxville.
and they do.
So why weren't they included in this group?
Can you, hang on, Dylan, can you?
I'm just trying to make sure everybody's fairly represented.
Well, I
and-
appreciate
and-
that, but I don't know what
that's-
your
that's
point
my
is.
only concern.
The only reasons Pella, so city managers, mayors, and then chiefs of the EMS agencies from Knoxville and Pella got together basically to break the logjam that existed in that larger group. And we've had a meeting, Chief Wyman hosted a meeting at City Hall here month and a half ago, maybe longer. With the EMS providers from all over the county, just to say, hey, we're not doing this, in secret. It's not a smoke-filled room situation. We don't want to hide anything from anybody, but we saw that we were the ones kind of not monopolizing the conversation, but we were the ones that had kind of the largest disagreements in terms of the funding models that had been proposed. And rather than make everybody else sit through those back and forth conversations, we wanted to see if we could cut through some of the clutter, get something that was agreeable, at least in theory, to us, and then take that to the broader group. I said in that meeting with the providers, if anybody feels like they're getting a raw deal, you absolutely do not have to agree to this. This is not set in stone. This is not a decree from either community, but we wanted to streamline it to the degree that we could. And move forward in that way. So that's really the only reason we did that. But yes, everybody will have a say in the
Okay,
end.
very
So
good.
that was important to,
Like I said, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that everybody gets.
absolutely,
Everybody gets fairly represented.
absolutely. Nope,
And everybody gets a voice, because
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like they did in the small group.
that
At
was,
least not yet.
yeah, that was something that,
And as long as you guys are saying that they do, then I'll believe you and trust you but I think that's the only fair thing to think of is
Yeah.
to make sure that everybody has a voice and is fairly represented because everybody in the county pays taxes and everybody in the county has needs. So let's make sure we take care of the county,
absolutely.
not just the 2 biggest communities.
Correct. Yeah. And truthfully, when the smaller agencies do better and have the resources that they need to do more, it's going to take pressure off the larger agencies, Knoxville, Pella, Pleasantville, et cetera. So
That's a good point, Dylan. If we can build up these smaller ones, it does take the load off of the bigger providers.
yeah,
As
so
long as the services are provided.
Exactly.
That's the key.
nope,
Exactly.
it's
Right.
not a,
Thank you
it's
very
not a
much.
money, to have for the larger, but.
And I'm not
yeah.
suggesting
Yeah,
that it
yeah.
is.
No, no, I hear
I
you.
mean, I'm
I
just
hear you.
concerned to make sure that everybody's treated fairly.
Totally.
I would hope with this, if, again, I'm going to say, it's a no-brainer that EMS is an essential service. I would just hope when it goes to the voters, that it's all set in front of them on what they're voting on. And where that money's going, and
And Steve, that's an educational piece, yes.
yes, it is, it's an
And that's where
educational piece.
The EMS that council will have to educate the people. And it'll have to go back to the cities and the council and their townships and educate and have town halls.
And
make
that's where
sure
that
people-
representation comes in, is in that advisory council especially.
Right.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Jim, thanks.
That's my understanding of it.
All right. Anything else on this topic? I think we beat this horse to death. All right. So the next steps will be, Dylan, we'll call a meeting of the ad hoc group, as it's been called, and see if this passes. Because it'll have the full, as Jason, as you said, it's going to have everybody there to decide whether or not this can come to the board. Once that happens, should that happen, then this board will have to vote on it. They'll have to listen to the presentation, listen to the report of the committee, listen to the people who are coming to speak on its behalf or against it, because there could be those, and then make those decisions. Between now and then, and whenever you call that meeting, Dylan, I'll have Jared and Jake, and I'll get with them to map out a timeline on ballot initiatives and what remains to be done to check the boxes on the statute. And again, I want to make sure the public is clear. Nobody here is right now supporting a tax increase. This is a discussion about how do we get this so that we can vote on it. Okay? And then everybody will have to make their decisions on whether or not they support it or not.
Yeah, if the public decides no, then we're in a whole new ballgame. again.
Exactly. Or if any of these boards don't pass it. I mean, if it doesn't make it out of the committee and doesn't make it past the Board of Supervisors, those are all real possibilities. Okay? Very good. Is there a motion to close discussion?
Motion to close discussion.
Second,
Johnner,
Aye.
McCombs,
aye.
Ramey.
Aye. All right, next, thank you. We have a resolution 24-25, award of contract.
You're up, Jay.
This Jay? Standing in for Tyler.
Yeah, regularly scheduled maintenance project on our seal coat roads. We divide our mileage into half, and we let a project for half of our mileage. And then the next year, we will do the other half of it, and then we will skip a year. So that puts them on a 3-year rotation. These projects were actually scheduled last year, but due to the budget, we skipped a year. So this is the 4th year on this set of roads. This project covers the roads down in Columbia, Marysville, Pershing, Attica, Knoxville Estates, and the road to Wallachuk Campground. There might be a segment that I'm missing there, but that's the bulk of them. So it's about 13 miles, which is about half of our seal coat roads in the county. We only received 1 bid on the project. Typically, we'll get 3 or 4. I'm not sure why we only got 1 bid this time. And the bid was 15% over our estimate, so. The project estimate was about 350,000, and this came in at 409,000. So that's, but yeah, we're recommending to go ahead with it because it's already been delayed 1 year.
Any questions for Jay? Thank you for doing that, Jay. Thank you for standing in and doing that.
Hey, Jake, really quick, in regards to the increase, do we just think because of the time of year it was bid, or do we just, people are just so busy?
estimating project costs has been very difficult the last couple of years.
Mm.
Sometimes we're 20% under and sometimes we're over. I mean, it's just been really hard to track the construction costs and where the contractors are at, whether they need to work or, we're not sure, but it's just been difficult to nail down the exact cost
Yeah.
the last few years.
All right, thank you.
Steve?
No, thank you, Jay. I understand.
All right, is there a motion on this resolution?
I'll make a motion, we approve resolution 2024-25.
I'll second.
Jake?
McCombs,
Aye.
Ramey,
Aye.
Johnner.
Aye.
Next, 2024-32. This is a community project fund application through Miller Meek's office. Who's speaking on this?
Oh, you want to talk on it, Jay?
Jay, are you up again?
Yeah, Tyler did all this work himself. This is gonna be similar to the grant we got to do Highway G28. I think it's for $2 million, I think is what he's asking for on this grant. And it's to do Highway T17 as, and if successful, I mean, you know, it's at least 2 years to get it to construction because, I mean, we're just now going to construction on G28 and he started that process at least 2 years ago. So I guess that's about all I know about it, so.
Okay. Fifth board questions? Oh,
Ty-
I'm
I was
sorry,
just gonna
Jake,
say,
go ahead.
Tyler, there's a deadline and he unfortunately was going to be gone this week, but essentially this letter is just starting this entire application process that it requires a resolution to allow the Board of Supervisors to get you to send in, this very initial step to start the application process.
Okay.
So it's not locking you into a project or anything like that. This is
You just do
literally
support
just
the
to-
application.
Just need to
Just-
support.
just to support the application. itself.
Correct, correct. Board, do you have any questions for Jay on this?
I have none.
All right, is there a motion?
Make motion to approve resolution 2024-32.
Second.
Ramey,
Aye.
Johnner.
Aye.
McCombs,
Aye.
All right, update. Steve?
No, I have none.
All right, Keisha?
Yeah, I have impact, my meeting with impact and aging resources.
All right, and I have none. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion we adjourn.
Second.
McCombs,
Aye.
Ramey,
Aye,
Johnner.
Aye.
very good. We are adjourned. Thank you.